Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Today, I have a fascinating woman. Gerri Detweiler has been answering credit and financing questions for more than 20 years. She's the author of co-author of 5 books on credit and financial topics, and has been interviewed in more than 4,000 news articles. Wow, that is impressive in and of itself. She's also testified before Congress and consumer credit legislation. She serves as the education director of NAV, which matches small business owners with financing options and provides free business and personal credit reports. You know, anybody who's been following me on Her Success Story for quite a while now know that I am passionate, very passionate about that. Our numbers tell us a story that always, financing, you have to be working your numbers, you have to be working your finances. And when I was connected to Gerri, I was over the top to have her on as a guest. So Gerri, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. And Ivy, I'm so glad you do what you do, but I know that a lot of people they hear finances and they freeze up inside. Yeah. I am not an accountant. So I don't approach it from that, angle. I approach it from the angle that, hey, you want to get your business where it wants to be. And this is one of the keys to do that.
So share with me, because it's always interesting. You're saying you're not an accountant. How did you get started on this?
Completely by accident.
I love those things.
I thought I was going to be a doctor. I decided med school wasn't for me. I ended up studying business, which I loved. It was a lot of fun. I ended up in Washington, D.C. and took a job with a nonprofit advocacy group completely by accident. And it turned out to shape my entire career. So like many people, I have a daughter who's going to graduate from college this year. We often don't know what we don't know. We don't know for sure what we want to do. And in my case, I ended up with an entire career out of an accidental job that I fell into.
So, okay, I love that story. And because Lord knows I built a career in printing out of a job that I said, I'll just do this for a year or so as I transition. So I hear that loud and clear. So what is this thing about financing debt? It's one thing to work a job for a long time. That's a career. It's another thing it's another thing when you actually, start writing books about this. So give me a little bit of what the premise of this is about. Like, how do we know about financing? How do we know? How could we be our best advocate?
I started in this career as a consumer advocate. And at the time, there were some gaps in terms of consumer protection. So when I started in this, you couldn't get your credit report for free. It wasn't written in plain English. You'd have to take time off work to go down and get your credit report if you wanted it. You didn't find out what your credit card costs until you actually got it in the mail. So I was approaching it from the consumer advocacy organization angle, which is how do we help protect people so they can make better decisions? What's interesting now, here we are a few decades later, and now my focus is working with small business owners. And on the small business side, it's exactly the same as it was back then with consumers. They don't have to tell you an interest rate or APR when you get small business financing. They don't have to give you your credit report for free. So you have to be your own advocate, so to speak, in order to make sure that you don't end up in a situation with, say, predatory financing or something that's going to be really expensive. And let me just give you the bad side of this real quick before we go to the good side. And the bad side is that many small business owners, they aren't experts at money, right? It's not what they're doing. They're good at what they do, but money is not it. And so it's very easy to fall into situations where you get taken advantage of. And there's an organization called the Opportunity Finance Network, and they help businesses that business owners who have gotten into trouble with predatory financing. The average interest rate that these business owners are paying, the average, well, do you want to take a guess, Ivy?
The average interest rate, it has to be over 20%.
Yeah, it's
And
actually
that's frightening.
It's actually 94%.
No.
94%. Yes. Yes. They don't have to tell you an interest rate or an APR. They'll use things like factor rate or the fee or whatever it may be. I mean, if you go right now and you are a PayPal merchant, you get an offer for financing, you're going to see a fee. You won't see an interest rate. So you have to figure out how do I figure out if that's a good deal, right?
How do I figure this out? How do I make educated and a smart decision on creating capital for my business?
Yes, exactly. And so now the good side of it is what you talk about, which is when you know your financial position, you're in a better position to make better strategic decisions. So
Right.
you can decide, it's the right time for me to take on financing? What am I going to do with this money? How's it going to help my business grow? I was on a call, for example, with accountants, a webinar, and an accountant called me afterwards and she said, I sell Pandora jewelry on the side. And a local jeweler is going out of business and he is liquidating his inventory. I need, X thousands of dollars to buy this inventory. I know how much I can make it, but I need the financing quickly. So being prepared for those kinds of opportunities is the plus side of knowing your finances. So you're in a better position to get the financing you need when you need it so you can grow, as opposed to being reactive or getting caught in predatory financing. I hope that's making sense. There's, two ways to look at this.
Well, what I'm hearing you say, which is what I adore, is it's always better to be proactive and prepared than reactive and scramble.
Yes.
Because when you go in proactive, you have an ability to create a plan and a strategy and then say, this is plan A, then we can navigate it this way or that way based on the information as more information comes in. Very often people see opportunity, they scramble for money, will go to any resource, which I didn't even know it could be as expensive as 90 some odd percent interest, which is absurd to borrow money on that.
Yeah, you'd have to have a very good ROI to be able to sustain that financing and make money off of it. But unfortunately, business owners don't always know that. And one thing we saw this past year with COVID is, even with the COVID relief loans and grants that the SBA and the Congress approved, we saw a lot of smaller businesses having trouble accessing that. Some of it was because of a lack of a banking relationship, but a lot of it was because they didn't have the fundamentals in place. They didn't have a business bank account. They didn't have their bookkeeping up to date. So when they said you apply based on your 2019 or 2020 Schedule C net income, they're like, I don't even have my bookkeeping up to date. How can I figure that out? So if anything, I would say this year is the year we say, I'm going to have those basics in place. I'm going to have two essential things. One is a business bank account that I use exclusively for my business. I don't write personal checks, for personal expenses out of it. I pay myself and then pay those expenses. And then I would say number two is I'm going to have a bookkeeping system so that every month my books are up to date. So if I do have an opportunity, want to apply for financing and the lender says, hey, we want to see a P&L, up-to-date P&L, you can produce that, or your accountant can produce that very quickly. Or if you say, hey, I want a second PPP loan, I'm going to base it on my 2020, net profit. You can actually calculate that and you're able to take advantage of those more quickly.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of my pet peeves is you're not in business if you don't have a bank account, a business bank account, to be clear, an attorney, an accountant. That's the qualifier for me when I'm meeting earlier stage business owners. If they don't have those three things ready at their fingertips, then they're not really in business. They're kind of playing in a hobby business. And I never like to see, ever, my personal and business money intermixed. Business, for me, Slater's success is Slater's success.
I agree. That's 100% the way you want it to run and the way you'll position your business to be successful and grow. And I'm in complete agreement, but I will tell you, I have talked to so many business owners this past year who did not have that, and it's hurt them, and they've struggled more than they should have as a result. So I just can't emphasize enough, open that business bank account, use it just for business, and separate those business and personal finances.
And I will actually go on. I will jump in a little further, at least for me. I personally always like working with a bank that I have a true personal relationship with. I love a good old fashioned, small bank that I could pick up the phone and I know who I'm getting, right? They know who Ivy Slater is when I'm looking for something or need something. I am at their fingertips. They're at my fingertips.
Yes, we saw that very much with PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program loans this year, that community banks really did some remarkable round-the-clock work to help business owners. Now, NAV, where I work, we also match business owners to financing. And one of the things that we heard is that many business owners were saying, hey, the big banks aren't picking up their phones. They aren't talking to me. They aren't answering questions. So just the fact that we were answering our phones and talking to people made business owners feel like, okay, there is someone out there who's willing to try to help me through this, because it was such a mess for so many of them.
It's true. It's very, very true. So tell me, like, what have you seen is some of the great success stories when a small business does it right? What does that look like?
When a small business does it right, they do a few things. One is the three pillars that I want them to focus on, if they're thinking forward thinking here, is making sure that their personal credit is strong, because every bank is going to want to check the owner's personal credit. And if you go in business with a partner, they're going to want to check theirs too. So anyone with 20% or more ownership, you should definitely be candid with each other about your credit scores, because the bank will check multiple credit scores in that situation. You build business credit so that your business has its own credit. You separate your business and personal finances, like I mentioned, a business bank account, and also probably a business credit card, so that you're using that exclusively for business purchases. And then you just set the foundation correctly. So this is the basic stuff, like you don't use a Hotmail address for your business. Your business has some sort of online presence. One thing we saw this year that I thought was really, really crucial and enlightening was businesses that had a way to reach their fans were much more likely to be able to succeed, whether it was through a crowdfunding campaign or gift cards or just special offers to their audience. So that could be a social media platform that you regularly engage in. It could be an email list, but some way that you could reach your fans on a regular basis. And that can also help for things like crowdfunding, which is a type of financing that may be appealing to some businesses. So those three pillars are going to put you in a much better position going forward. And then, of course, having your books up to date, which we mentioned is so crucially important, even though it's often the eat your broccoli advice that I have to give. I don't love it either, but I was a business owner myself for 10 years. I hated doing my bookkeeping, but you have to get to a place where you feel at peace with that, or you hire someone you trust and you review it.
Right. And I'm a big fan of hiring the areas that are not your sweet spot, but that doesn't mean that you can walk away if not overseeing it.
Correct.
And I think that's a misnomer. I love a great bookkeeper. I love a great accountant, a CFO, but that doesn't mean that the buck stops with you. And as a CEO or owner of any business, you must know your numbers.
Yes. And I love to collaborate. After my first book, all my other books were written with co-authors. I really enjoyed that process. But I did get involved with a business partner who ended up ripping me off for tens of thousands of dollars on a project that we did together. So you also have to be careful and screen, the
Yeah.
companies that you partner with, the providers, like you said, backing up and verifying. You can check business credit on a business partner. You can check there's nothing stopping you from doing so. And that may show you that perhaps that company is having some financial problems and maybe you need to get a deposit or think twice about, getting too involved with them until you see that they're paying you on time.
Yeah. I love that piece of information. What do you've been a business owner, you've authored numerous books, you're still in this field. What has been some of the biggest challenges you have faced over the years?
Oh gosh. The biggest challenges for me have probably been trying to figure out what to focus on, next and what to do next. There's always so many more opportunities than there is time to take advantage of those opportunities. So I, like many people, have had a coach and have enjoyed working with people who can help hold me accountable. That's the way I work. I work well with deadlines and accountability. So sometimes it is great to get that additional feedback to help you focus on what's going to really take your business forward. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like that, right? We have so many great ideas.
One of the greatest thing about entrepreneurship is the vision and how many great ideas there are. And yet the great success is about the consistency of the baby steps and implementation and not always the giant steps.
Yes, exactly. And having that accountability can be very valuable. So whether you get a business mentor or business coach, I think that's a big key to success for many business owners.
And so what do you see in coming into 2021 now? And now that we're in 2021, we had huge learning lessons as small business owners in 2020.
We did. Yes.
Did we get educated?
To some extent, yes. I mean, I think one thing that I've seen is there are a lot of business owners who are running their business sort of like, it's not even a hobby because it is their form of income, but they haven't put the business part of it together. So they're offering a product or service, but they haven't laid the foundation for a business. And so they don't really have a complete business. So that's going to be something that's going to set apart those who are able to be successful this year by having that foundation. And we're in for a rocky ride for a little while longer. I don't dispute that. It could be the rest of the year, but I do think there is tremendous pent-up demand on the consumer side. And so that means that whether your business is B2C, you sell directly to consumers, or B2B, you sell to other businesses. When we get to that point where people feel safe to go out again and travel and eat out and visit their relatives, spending will go up and there will be a lot of opportunities. So businesses really want to do what they can to hang on. If your business is struggling, get the help you can get. Take advantage of the government relief programs. More are going to be coming this year. Take advantage of those, but also really be focused. If you can't do what you normally do, then focus on building the foundation, making sure that you have that way to reach your fans, that you develop your email list or that social media presence, that you're setting up your books and you understand so that you can at least look at it and see if it's accurate and make sure that you understand, if your business is making money or not, those basics. All those things are going to really help you if you want to take part in what I do think will be a big boom for small businesses, either late 2021 or beginning of 2022.
I love that. Any last tips for our listeners today?
Well, if you aren't familiar with your business credit, you can check it for free at NAV, where I work, nav.com. And we do have a lot of resources on COVID relief loans, COVID relief grants, as well as traditional financing. So if your business is doing well, and there are plenty that are doing well right now, you can look at other financing options and prepare your business, and it's completely free. So it's sort of like Credit Karma, but for small business.
I love that. I love that this is out there as a resource. I was thrilled to have you on, Gerri, as a guest today, because I felt it was such an important topic. to share with our listeners. Small business owners out there, listeners, be smart. Go to nav.com, check your business credit. Be smart. Run your business as a business, not as a hobby. Get all your ducks in order. Take this as a greatest learning lesson and resource. Gerri's out there. I'm out there. We're two halves of a whole of resources. Gerri, how can our listeners know more about you and stay in touch?
Yeah, I'm at nav.com, nav.com/blog. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter or other social media platforms. And I'm always happy to make new connections with small business owners. And I love hearing small business owner stories because I often write about them.
Love that. Listeners, I am inviting you to leave a takeaway and an action step in the comments below, to let us know what you took away from our Gerri and I's conversation today and what action you're going to take for your business. Of course, hit subscribe. We come into your inbox every Monday with fresh content and fabulous guests just like today. Thank you, and I will see you next time.